Well, hello, everybody. I am happy to be with you and happy to share some of the things I have learned about technology in the last few years. You know, technology affects all of us, which is really cool because, I do a podcast all about Scotland, and I share Scottish music and culture. And as awesome as that is, not everybody, is into Scotland, But what I have found is that everybody is into technology to varying degrees of understanding and experience and struggle. So it's pretty awesome to gather with others and just address the topic, And this is an open arena. So, when we have questions at the end, feel free to ask anything, something you're struggling with at home, something that you've seen on the news that just freaks you out. Whatever it is, just ask it. And we also have a quiz at the end, a little incentive. So those who are paying attention today will walk away with a resource that I've hand-chosen that's going to help you with your journey with technology and glorifying God. So I'll start with just a little bit about me. As Pastor Aaron said, I'm a senior fellow and media specialist at the Discovery Institute. If you have not come across the Discovery Institute yet, you're in for a treat. They have lots of different programs that are really pretty amazing. The program that I work full-time in is the Center for Science and Culture. So I work with the intelligent design community of scientists and scholars and thinkers who are trying to share evidence of design in nature. They found amazing scientific evidences that reveal that, hey, this might not be an accident, that there might be some purpose here, And so I work with the scientists and scholars in that area. We have other programs. We have a program on artificial and natural intelligence. That's a relatively new one, just to address some of the issues that are coming up with AI and with all the things that are related to that. So if you haven't checked Discovery Institute out, I encourage you to do so. I was born and raised in Scotland, so I do talk a little funny, especially when you get me going. I get excited or get angry. My kids hear the Scottishness sometimes. But I was born and raised in Scotland's capital city, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place if you get a chance to go there. It's called the Athens of the North for a lot of reasons. So if I talk funny, that's why. I taught middle school for 6 years prior to joining Discovery Institute, and that taught me some valuable lessons, not the least of which is, get your butt to work by 7:30 in the morning, or you'll get a black mark from our secretary who would keep attendance going, and, we'd have to be there for devotions. It was a great time to start the day. And then jumping right into, having kids pouring through my classroom every day, 125 of them. And it was just an awesome experience being a middle school teacher. I also have been studying technology officially for about 5 years, and I'll explain why. Why did I gravitate to this thing that we've got going? Modern technology. Well, like you, like many of you, I am a parent. I am a father to 4 wonderful kids, and that's really the main reason, that I got into this. I was looking at myself and how I was dealing with technology, but I was also thinking about them and how they're going to wrestle with it and what they need to learn before they go out into the world and build a path themselves. I'm also immersed in technology virtually every day as a media specialist. I work with all kinds of digital technologies to, again, promote intelligent design and the scientific evidence for actual design in nature. So whether I like it or not, I have to be part of Facebook. I have to be on Twitter, and so I've learned to make my peace with that. I tended to avoid Twitter for a long time just because it was so toxic, but things may be looking up in that area, so I'm back on there. The other reason that I gravitated to technology is just that I love it, I'm not somebody you could accuse of being a Luddite, which is a silly term, actually. I can explain that one. But a Luddite is just basically somebody who doesn't like technology, would rather put it in a box and go live in the woods. That is not me in the least. I love it. I have a relatively recent version of an iPhone. I get excited about gadgets. It's really cool. And so I'm coming from a place of loving technology, not you need to turn that off and this is garbage, No way, And as I walk through what I'm talking about today, I think you'll understand why. So the main reason I started, studying this was I asked, how is this changing me? I have my smartphone that I pretty much got, when it came out in 07, 08, and I've had one ever since. And I often wonder, well, if I didn't have it, how would I be? How would I act? Would I be any different? And it's an interesting question. So with our time together, I would like to share with you some of the discoveries that I have come across in recent years. I'm going to help you just change your understanding of the word technology, and also another important phenomenon called technique. We're going to gain a new appreciation today for God as the original technician. This is something that I relatively recently added to my understanding of, and it's pretty awesome. I'm also going to give you methods to evaluate the technology that you have and use every day, and be able to decide if it's something that should be in your life or not. And you can also apply that to the future tech, the stuff that they're going to tempt you with next week and next month and next year. Most importantly, I'll give you tips so that you can help your whole family glorify God in the unique way that each member of your family can. As we're going to talk about, technology is all about us. So the faster we grasp that, the faster we can glorify God using it and just do amazing things for the kingdom while we yet have breath. I may use some big words, and I'm sorry for that. Sorry, not sorry, really, because I'm an English teacher, and, big words are cool. And it's great to learn not only words you never realized, but words that you thought you had a grasp on, and you can get deeper understanding. I love that stuff. Don't worry if you can't grasp everything in one go, though. I'm available anytime. I'm just a phone call or email away. I can even come to your house and chat with you about personal issues you're having, just to give you some clarity and some advice. And we also have a video available, so you can go back and kind of review things. Well, as I mentioned, we are going to have a quiz, so try to pay attention as much as you can. And if anybody's sleeping, I probably won't wake you, and that's okay. So here is a process that I've sort of developed. I have a 3-step approach to what I call authentic technology. The first step is renewing our understanding of technology. That light bulb has to go off a little bit as we confront what technology actually is. And then it would be time to reset. Reset our boundaries with technology, become the boss of the gadgets and services and platforms that we choose to use. And that does take time. This is not an overnight process. But the most important thing is first renewing our understanding. And then we will reset our boundaries. And finally, we get to release our God-given potential to others. To ourselves, yes, but to others more importantly. So that is the 3 steps in the process that we're going to discuss today. I'd like to start off by reading Ephesians 2, because it's really appropriate to our age and to the moments we're living in. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air. We'll come back to that part later. The Spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But, and there's one of the big buts of the Bible, but because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in our transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved, and God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace, expressed in his kindness to us in Jesus. And here's the kicker. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not something that is ours, like we've done. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that anyone can boast. For we are God's handiwork. We are his masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, and those good works, get this, were planned in advance for us to do. So before we were knitted together in our mother's womb, he was planning good works for us to do. So it becomes really important then to tap into that and be able to do them. I want to say a few words on some words that were in that passage, the kingdom of the air. This is something that my friend Doug Smith, author of the book Unintentional, How Our Screens Shape Our Desires and How We Can Break Free, kind of introduced me to. And I thought it was pretty amazing. The term air was used in the ancient world to refer to spiritual realms where demons operated. You know, who's the ruler of this realm? Well, we know that Satan is. It's an unseen realm. You know, the air is unseen, and so are the forces of darkness spiritually. Doug Smith says, most of today's deceptions are literally carried by digital signals transmitted through the air. So you might not have thought about that before, but give that some time to think in. Our devices connect and transmit data wirelessly. So is this a coincidence? I'm not going to say what it is or what it isn't, but I am going to say that has spiritual significance, people. You know, we are sending things through a realm in which Satan operates. And he is well aware of what is being transmitted and using it to his full advantage. Well, I think you might recognize this. This is from the 2008 film WALL-E. WALL-E. And this is an image of the humans in WALL-E, not the cute machines that the story is based on. Yeah, we have a whole spaceship full of humans in WALL-E, and what are they doing? They're sitting, they're enjoying screens in front of them, they're having technology do their thinking for them. They don't even have to decide what clothes to wear, because as soon as they think of something and they're inspired to do it by the screens around them, boom, it happens. And so I put this up, as a joke, but also as something that could be close to reality, depending on the direction we go. The folks here, they don't look like a vanquished people, but they are. They've been vanquished by artificial intelligence, not hostile AI that is, shooting them up and scaring them, but more a willingness to just hand the reins over to AI and to screens and to technology and just be okay with it. So this might seem far-fetched, but where are we going to be in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? We're hearing talk of the metaverse now, where you can step in this virtual world, leave the real world behind, and just enjoy pretty much anything you can enjoy in the real world. What is that going to do to us? Well, one of my discoveries I'm going to share with you today is that technology is all about us. And that is awesome. But it's not about us in the passive way, the selfish way, the distracting way, or the misleading way. So let me enlighten you a little bit. The word technology, basically, if you look it up in the dictionary, the practical application of knowledge in a particular area, a manner of accomplishing a task, especially using technical processes, methods, or knowledge. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. The sum of the ways, this is another definition, in which social groups provide themselves with the material objects of their civilization. Now that got me thinking as I started studying all this. So where do these material objects come from? What is this technology? So I dug a little deeper. The prefix techno comes from the Greek techne, which means art, skill, craft in work, or a system of making or doing. So that's the techno part. And then I dug even deeper than that, because I just love to do that. I love to get to the bottom of things. And at the bottom of technology, you find the root TEKS, T-E-K-S. And if you don't take anything else away from me today, please take that root away with you. TEKS, T-E-K-S. What does it mean? It literally means to weave or fabricate. In older languages, the root frames words like hatchet, axe, carve, join, build, unite. The TEKS root is where we get words like tectonic, text, tiller, and toil. So here are some examples visually. There's a tiller, an older type of tiller. Basically, it's there to help you steer a boat. We have newer ones now that combine the whole machine, not just the handle, but everything all in one to make your boat go. And on land, we used to have tillers that were pulled by horses. And that's how you would burrow the ground and create the furrows and prepare to plant. Nowadays, they have rototillers, and other machinery that can do the job with a little more ease. But that's just one example of a word that comes from technology. Here are a few others. You've got the literal weaving of a basket or something like it. You've got the building of a home. If you think of all the technologies that have to come together to build a beautiful home, it's quite amazing to see the craftsmen and craftswomen work on a beautiful dwelling. My wife said this picture was creepy, but it sort of is creepy when another human is fashioning a likeness of us. Creepy in a good way, I would say, because that is a direct emulation of what God has done. So here we have this sculptor, doing his or her technology. It looks like a man doing his technology and fashioning this human face. And this is another example of technology. Books, writing, typewriters, computers, lamps, you name it. Even the humble pencil. I tell my kids all the time, they say, "Can I play with technology?" Here you go. Here's a pencil. Have at it. So we have a little fun with that. So the heart of the word technology then is the art and the skill that is used to make or build objects that are useful for human living. And, the good news about all this is not that the art and skill belongs to just the person that created the piece of technology, like baby bottles. It also belongs to us. It applies to anyone who harnesses that tool, as well as to the person who made it. That, I thought, was the best news of all. I was just really excited, to delve into this and realize, gosh, this is all about us. Just not in this kind of way, where we're zombies, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. I've been staying up late, interacting with this gentleman for quite some time. He died in 1994, but still. He is Jacques Ellul. He is a gentleman I came across a few years back. He lived pretty much throughout the whole of the 20th century, 1912 to 1994. So imagine, what he would have experienced in his lifetime. He was primed to discuss technology. He was a sociologist, a theologian, and a philosopher of technology. He was author of 50-plus books and 1,000 articles. He was pretty prolific as a teacher and a writer. His main themes were this threat to human freedom from modern technology and the Christian's unique contribution to the modern world. This is why I'm just flabbergasted that I came across this guy. Not only does he have an awesome way to look at technology and evaluate it, he is also a Christian. And it just blew my mind, that he would not only spend books presenting the problem, he also had the solution. And I'll be sharing that with you. So he's my new great friend. Here's a few quotes that are relevant to today's talk. When we become conscious, Ellul says, of that which determines our life, we attain the highest degree of freedom. And also he had this to say, now we ought to react vigorously against this slackness. He was talking about the modern tendency to just kind of move along, have your gadgets, and just not really pay too much attention to the important things of life. This tendency to drift, he called it. If we are to live in this world, we need to know it more profoundly. We need to rediscover the meaning of events and the spiritual framework which our contemporaries have lost. In other words, basically the title of my talk today, how do we glorify God in a technological society? Well, let's get into the first of my 3 steps here. We're renewing our understanding of technology. So another discovery I had recently, courtesy of my pastor, Pastor Aaron, is that God is the original technician. And this kind of goes hand in hand with our own changing of the word technology in our hearts. To realize that not only is technology about us, we are God's technology. Pastor Aaron shared the key words of Psalm 139, 13 through 16 recently, and it kind of just jumped out at me, We're formed, knitted, made, woven, He saw us, and we were written. And I focused on the word woven, and I dove into that a little bit, and you get to the Hebrew word sakach, which means to hedge or fence about, to shut in. Think of the womb where we spend the first moments of our being, life. And it also means to weave together, which directly relates to the root of technology. So it's very fair to say that God is the original technician, and that He's a God of technology, and that we can produce technology and be creative because He first produced us. We're told that we can love because He first loved us. Well, we can do technology too that way. So that was really exciting. Charles Spurgeon, in his commentary, says, we are covered in God cloth, which is a beautiful way to think about it. Your skin as God cloth. What tapestry, he says, can equal the human fabric? So thank you, Pastor Aaron, for that. That was awesome. So now we get to something that Alul introduced me to, and that is the phenomenon of technique. Now, buckle up, because this might be a little hard to understand, but I think you can get it. God made our brains really awesome and amazing, and you can trust it. You can trust it. So, technique, basically, if you were to look it up, right, it's a practical method applied to a task. Okay, it's just basically how somebody does something, right, at its most basic form. And, it's uncontroversial, it's straightforward, it's just part of life, or at least it used to be. Elul defines technique as the ensemble of practices by which one uses available resources to achieve values. Okay, straightforward, fair enough. Technique by itself is not a bad thing. In the hands of an entity or company or leader with different values than us, though, it can become harmful to us. And I'll attempt to explain why in the next moments here. A little bit of history. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, technique was, as I said, a straightforward part of life. Technique was localized. What one craftsman or woman doing in one country was what they were doing wasn't related necessarily to how somebody else did something of the same type. The world was bigger because we didn't have airplanes that could get somewhere in an hour or two, and people, the technique of our technology developed along with us, and it developed at a slow pace that kept human equilibrium. We didn't get out of whack. Today we feel out of whack because every few months there's new technology coming along. Every year or even half year, Apple has this big fanfare about new gadgets that they're coming out with. We can't keep up today. And that's because the speed of technique is out of our control now. The Industrial Revolution was the moment when, human muscle and mind started to be replaced as a source of energy and information. And, some of it was a net good for humanity with the machines that we were able to develop, steam power, turbines, all these machines that could create textiles. We have some amazing machinery that has been developed, but then that speed of technique just kind of overtook us. And if you look back, you can see how people struggled with that from the Industrial Revolution on. Since then, technique has basically entered every sphere of our life and has come to dominate human life. Let me explain. Modern technique is concerned with the perfection of the instrument, right? The device, not necessarily the perfection of the human, okay, the person using it. Modern technique is governed by rationality, artificiality, and automation. It decides what is moral. So technique, modern technique at least, is not neutral, okay? It's going to steamroll anything that it doesn't think is the most efficient and most useful way of going about something. Technique is totalitarian. You might have heard that word recently in terms of leaders of different countries who don't allow their people to have freedom and liberty. Technique is totalitarian because there is no other way except the technique that is chosen. It reduces the role of human invention. It cuts the cord, if you can think of a pair of scissors. We are connected to nature, right, because we are part of God's creation. We are connected to God. We are His handiwork. And yet here comes technique that can often sever that cord. And then we're connected to technology instead of nature and instead of nature's God. Jacques Ellul, in the book The Technological Society, written in 1954, says, in overtaking a culture, a technique disassociates the sociological forms, right, which is just a fancy way of saying it separates, forms and ideas that have kept us together. It destroys the moral framework. It desacralizes men and things. It takes us away from the sacred. It explodes social and religious taboos. We're seeing a lot of that. And it reduces the body social to a collection of individuals. And if there's any word that describes modern civilization today, it's individual, right? I want my truth, my authentic self, my settings, my desires. It's all about me. You sit down, And so we're really seeing this in action, what he predicted in the 50s. So, who controls technique in today's digital age? And you're welcome to actually give me an answer. Who do you think controls it? We've seen that it's going past us now. We're not in control of the technique in every sphere of our life anymore. It's not like before the Industrial Revolution. So who controls a lot of the technique in today's age? Any thoughts? Isla?
Your phone.
Okay. Yeah, your phone does dictate a lot of what you do, right? You might think, oh, no. I set this. I am the one that puts the apps on. This is me. Well, yeah, it is you, but it's you as Apple wants you to see you, right? So you're right, Isla, very deep. So the bottom line there is that big tech is controlling the technique in today's digital landscape. And when I say big tech, I mean the ensemble of the biggest technology companies, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Alphabet, even Netflix, I think you could throw in there now. Just any company that has gotten so big that it's dominating the stock market and also dominating our lives in a lot of ways. In our modern technical age, technique becomes the way that we lose our freedom, okay? I don't know if you noticed the quote that I had up on the initial slide. That was Jacques Ellul saying that, the modern person is going to have everything their heart desires, except, of course, their freedom. So that's what Ellul is referring to there. And technique is the way by which we lose our freedom in many ways. Ellul realized, even back in the 50s, right? I know he lived to 1994, but he realized all the way back in the 40s and 50s that at stake is our very life. And we shall need all the energy, all the inventiveness, all the imagination and goodness and strength that we can muster to triumph in this predicament. Well, what's our predicament? Well, big tech dictates the techniques, and remember, techniques are the methods by which we access information, connect with other people, entertain ourselves, get our news and current events, live much of our lives, shopping, medical, fitness, mental health, recreation, learning, habits, everyday thinking. You name it, there's an app for that, and there's a piece of technology for that. I do often chuckle when I come across apps that just kind of go beyond, what we should normally be thinking about. One recently I saw was an app that connects to your smart fridge and tells you when you're low on milk, and then there's another app where you put in the dates of all the food you put in your fridge, and then it will tell you when it's time to replace things. And I wonder, how much better is that than just looking at the dates on your stuff, smelling it, occasionally ingesting a piece of mold, whatever, you don't need an app to do that. Aaron.
There is an app called
Run P.
It tells you the best time to go to the bathroom when you're watching a movie.
Wow. I mean, this is the level. This is where we're at, people, okay? You have an app. Somebody out there thought it was a good idea to create an app and release it to the world that tells you when to pee. That's technique, right? That is technique. That is a company saying, we're steering you this way because we think it's the best way. You'll miss this scene, but it doesn't matter to us, and it won't matter to you. I mean, the thinking or lack of, it's amazing. One of Jacques Ellul's contemporaries said, it exists because it was necessary to create it. At least they thought it was, these tech teams. But they didn't stop to think if they should create it. It's like Dr. Malcolm in Jurassic Park, They were so busy creating it that they didn't stop to think if they should, What a line. And that relates here. 3 examples of big tech's control of technique, okay? Pastor Aaron shared one already. That was awesome. But there are plenty of them, and you'll think of some as you go home today. The first one I'll mention is Netflix. They start things for you, They start the preview when you navigate to a title. They will start the next episode before you have time to think. They'll suggest other content. You can even set it to just keep playing stuff, without you even touching it. And sure, we could turn that off. At least now we can. I don't know if we could initially. We can turn that off. But the point is, they thought it was good for those features to be in place. When the credits roll on something, that is our time. That's our time to say, well, gee, maybe we should get some sleep, honey. Or, gee, I've wasted enough time. I've got homework, But they take that away from us. It's just 5 seconds and boom, you can't even grab the remote, It's like, oh, darn, I got to watch it now, Anyway, that's one example. The other example is, some of you may relate to this, the iPhone lost the home button a few generations ago. And that was a sad time for some folks. People got used to that button. That was a safety net, get me back out of this craziness, back to my home page. And it disappeared. That's an example of technique. Apple, on high in Cupertino, decided the button was silly, decided the button was just so last year, And so they took it away. And how did they fix it? Well, now we have to touch our phone more than we did. Pushing a button's one thing, but then now you got to kind of, and kind of move around. You're touching their device more, and that kind of fits the bill for them, because the more you touch it, this beautiful object that's made of sand and silicone, the more you touch it, the more you fall in love with it, because this is a thing of beauty. I mean, you can't deny that. And it's okay that it's a thing of beauty, but it's not necessarily okay what it's doing to us through the techniques that they use. Third example, you might have heard the news on this. Again, Apple. I like to pick on Apple because I'm in their garden. I'm in their walled garden, also known as an ecosystem. I am an appler. guy, And so I noticed that Apple were the first to release a pregnant man emoji into their keyboards. So, without people even really realizing, unless they're aware of it, they'll hit update or they'll have it set to automatic, and boom, there's a pregnant man emoji whenever you need to send one in a text. And that is probably the biggest example here, the most important example I can share with you today, because that's very meaningful. The other ones you can get over, but and you can certainly ignore this emoji and ignore what they're trying to do, but there's a lot to be said about that when a company does that and takes that step for millions and millions of phone users. You'll be able to think of other examples. Fitness trackers, there's a lot of technique involved with, you're not just going for a walk anymore, you're, setting up a program of fitness that has all this data and, fancy information to share and all that. It's not just a simple walk anymore. Contactless payments, that's another form of technique. Tickets, movie tickets. I could tell you horror stories about me walking into a movie theater, happy to be around humans. And then they direct me to this machine over on the side. I'm like, what? I want to talk to you, But no, it's the machine. AMC movies. If you go to certain locations, you're going to be interacting with a machine instead of a human being. They'll stand there and watch you. Need any help there? But they won't be, there's no connection there. I'm just connecting with a machine again. You might think, well, that's a small thing. Why are you complaining? Well, all these small things add up to something big, And you've heard the old analogy of the frog boiling, haven't you? How do you boil a frog? You do it slowly. How do you do things slowly so people don't realize? You do it in small increments. Anyway, I'm sure you can think of a lot of other examples of technique, but there's 3 I came up with for you. All this said, we have to realize that we can't trust companies that have different values than us to dictate the best methods for us. That's the bottom line, When you understand technique, right, and when you apply it to our new understanding of technology, that it's all about us and our art and our skill, all right, then you say, well, wait a minute, Apple and Google and Microsoft and all the others. You're trying to tell me how to do this in all these different areas of my life. I'm supposed to be in charge of that. I'm supposed to be reading God's word. I have good works to do that have been pre-planned in advance. And yet you're telling me which ways to go, No, we got to stop that. We must choose methods ourselves based on God's word. And that's going to mean, again, the scissors, cutting the cord between you and any tech that doesn't help you glorify God.
Can you go back to that real quick?
Sure thing. So, now, how do we do that? Well, if you can see that picture, it's something that I've seen since I was young. My parents took me all over the world on an airplane, and I got used to seeing this image, and them talking about it before takeoff. What do we do with our children? Do we put the mask on them in an emergency on an airplane, or do we put it on ourselves first? Well, as the picture shows you, take care of yourself so you can breathe, and then help your children in an emergency situation. So that's just a reminder to me to remind you that I'm going to share this with you, and then it's your job to share it with your children, the rest of your family. Take care of yourself first, okay? And then help others. And you know what? I'll go as far as saying that Christians have a duty to help others with this. And I'll get to that in a moment. So it's time to show your tech who's boss, okay? It's time to be a tech boss. The first thing you do is you survey all your current gadgets, your subscriptions, your platforms, your services, and you ask some questions, okay? Here are a few. Does this technology positively or negatively affect my walk with God, my time, my energy, my relationships, my potential, my memory? How many telephone numbers do you remember by heart now? Attitude, my outlook, my finances, my marriage, my kids. Okay? And that's just a partial list. But you have to ask, positively or negatively influencing me here? Okay, be honest with yourself. The first step to this is realizing, then you got to be honest, and you got to take your time to make the changes you need to release your potential. That's it in a nutshell. Another question you can ask is, can I weave something useful and good for myself and or others with this tech tool? And if I really can't, then you sell it, okay? Or you give it away as a gift, you know? If you spend more time, here's a way to look at it. If you spend more time on kingdom business, you'll naturally spend less time on gadgets, news feeds, and basically mindless entertainment, you know? And we get into these habits, don't we? My wife and I love to sit down and watch British murder mysteries. Cue laughter. You know, it's I don't know why. We don't watch gruesome stuff, you know. We just like to see how they figure out who killed who, you know. And, you know, I try to make the argument that it's very godly, you know, to stand up for those who have been slain and to get to the bottom of that, because that's good. And it really is. But we've gotten in the habit of this, you know. We're in the habit of just sitting down and watching this stuff. And you know what? It doesn't take long before we're making allowances for certain things we see on the screen. You know, a kiss here, a word mentioned here, and we'll overlook it. But this is the world, you know. This is the world making this content, you know. And it's okay to like something, but if it's getting in the way of your kingdom business, you got to boot it. So, Mark 12:30 and 31 is relevant here. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And remember, the second of the greatest commandments, love your neighbor as yourself. But how much can you love your neighbor if you're stuck on this technology that's drawing you in and shaping your desires and filling your time? Okay, we have a finite time on this earth. Okay, it's tick-tocking. Okay. No pun intended. No Chinese video platform in mind here. It's TikTok in our time, okay? And we have to align ourselves with the greatest commandments: loving God, loving neighbor. Okay, once you've surveyed everything and you've asked those tough questions, the next thing is you start the purge. I do like the word purge. You know, it's very final. You know, it's very strong. You know, when you start purging, that's you being the boss, you know. That's you deciding whether you want something in your life or not. You have to purge anything that doesn't make the cut, okay? Cancel the subscriptions, sell the gadgets, close the accounts, say bye-bye to any company that doesn't respect your values and is getting in between you and your kingdom business. Apply the same standards to everything in the future. Okay? All the gadgets you're going to see on TV or you're going to see a friend using. Okay? This gets to the how much is enough idea. I don't know if you know the singer Teddy Swims. He has a song called Simple Things, right? And he says, lately I've been asking myself, what's enough? You know? What is enough? What is enough to Apple? There is no enough to Apple, because Apple is already at work on the next model of iPhone. They're already at work on the next iOS. You know, tech companies don't stop. They don't reach a point where they say, okay, we did what we've set out to do, let's go home. Okay? Now, that doesn't fault the companies, because we're all out to make money and take home a paycheck, but it reminds you that you are the one that has to make the decisions here. Because Apple's not going to make it for you. Google's not going to make it for you. Microsoft's not going to make it for you. Netflix isn't going to make it for you.
Well, to your point, they'll make it for you for their purpose.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. And I did have a picture, I don't know if you noticed, of a boxer, you know, boom, you know, a knockout a few slides ago. And I put that in there because, as my friend Doug Smith has pointed out in his book, Unintentional, it's sort of a 1-2 with these companies. You know, the first punch is waking you up to, hey, you know, find your authentic self. It's all about you. You decide. Live a little. Go with your feelings. Right. That's the first punch. Okay, and then it's whoop. Okay, and that second punch is, but here are the desires we're going to shape for you. Okay, through the technique we use and the screens that you access our content. Here's the desires we'd like you to have. It's all about you. Come on, it's all about you. Here are the desires we want for you. And so thank you, Aaron, for mentioning that. The power button, people, is your friend. Okay, the power button, and this is why I adopted this as my kind of logo and stuff. I have stickers that I'd like all of you to take home. And it's got the power button on there and a few other symbolic things to remind us that we have the power to push that button, shut it off, and move on. Or, if we have decided it's a piece of tech that ought to be in our life for our kingdom business, turn it on and use it. Harness it, Use the heck out of it for God's glory. If you've ever seen one of these are unplug boxes. Here are some ways that you can keep your tech in check. Some practical things. The first hour of your day, that's yours. Yours and God's. The last hour of your day, again, yours and God's. Don't let a piece of tech get in the way. Turn it off for your first hour and your last hour. Meal times, another good time to be screen free. You decide. There is no best way of doing this. Okay, no best technique for every family here. You have to look at the needs of your family, your schedule. You decide when to turn it off and when to have screen-free times. When they're not in use, keep your gadgets inside an unplug box. Not only does that get them out the way, it also reminds people that see the box that, hey, they're in their place. They're in a box, and they're not being used right now. And believe me, I keep my phone in my pocket. One, because it counts my steps, and it won't if I don't, okay? But I need to get past that, because if I'm going to teach this stuff, I need to live it, okay? And two, it kind of feels good to keep it close. It's like, okay, I'm good, But you need to practice putting this in the other room. You need to practice purposely leaving it at home when you come to church or anywhere you're going. Practice being without it. And most definitely, the first hour of the day and the last. Here's another idea. Add some retro tech to your home. Okay? At our home, we have, we call it the mustard phone. It's a 1960s era replica of a handheld phone, the one you pick up. And this one's touch tone, but I really like the rotary ones that I first grew up on. It takes a minute to dial a number, But in that minute, you get to think, do I really want to talk to this person? Okay, so add some retro tech. We have a turntable, an Audio-Technica turntable. It is Bluetooth, so it does connect to our wireless speaker, but it's cool because it's retro tech, and it reminds us that, hey, not everything's on a playlist on your phone. And I realize my kids, they've built playlists on our music streaming device or app, and that's all they know is my playlist of music, things I've added. They don't realize the concept of an album, or you have to wait till you get paid to go buy the latest CD from your favorite group, Things have gotten a lot faster and a lot more accessible. So, other ways you can handle this with your kids. Practice.
You skipped one.
Did I?
Can you tell us about the router?
The router, yes. I learned pretty quickly recently that turning off your router gives you a better night's sleep. And most of us have a router at home, for wireless internet. And I did some research on the radio waves that are coming from devices that are plugged in, especially radio waves that are wireless. And I kid you not, I bought a meter, and I did this. I first tested it in our bedroom, and it was coming through at 0.8. And the recommended dose of RF frequency radiation is 1.0, right? According to what I was researching. And it was coming in at 0.8 on our bed, in our bedroom. Then I unplugged it, or I set a timer so that it would go off each night. And the very next night, I measured it, and it was 0.03. So huge drop. And I'm telling you, I started dreaming vivid dreams immediately. Take that, as you will. But it's certainly cool to be able to turn that off and just see a difference. So tips with your kids. Practice curiosity. Get out there and be curious. Be creative. Don't be tempted to download educational apps or games and let those replace what you would do outdoors. I'm not shaming you for anything you've done so far. Again, this is a fresh start we can all have, and I'm sharing this with you so that you can also have a fresh start. So don't feel any shame about things you already do right now. That's kind of the point. You're realizing things need a change and the ways to do it. But practice these things with your kids, develop wonder in them, away from a bright screen. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the more you give a kid a screen, the less they want a book. And even the less they want to watch a movie. Like, movies are so old school, when you have a bright, shiny screen where it interacts with you, It's kind of amazing to see that transition in them, to see them say, books suck, or I don't like to read books. You don't want to get there. And if you see those symptoms, you need to make changes quickly so that they can develop a love for learning, a curiosity. The more they read, the better they're going to do in school, the bigger vocabulary they're going to have. There's so many advantages. Reading aloud with them, letting them read to you, so many ways you can do it. Another piece of advice, especially with kid households, is ditch the digital assistants. Okay, we're talking Siri, Google, Alexa, okay? I have an acronym for these, LED. Anybody know what it stands for? It's not the LED we know of technology. LED. Caledonia, do you remember this from our talks? Okay, LED stands for lazy, entitled, and dumb. Okay? And I mean dumb not in the insulting sense. I mean intellectually dumb. Okay? When you use a digital assistant on a regular basis, okay, you're basically opening the door to getting lazy, being entitled. You get information right away. There's no waiting. And you don't care about journeys of discovery anymore. Just give me the information, I don't want to go to the library. I don't want to pick up a book. I don't want to open the dictionary. I just want it now, And we have to remember that learning is a journey, It's not an instant download. So for those reasons and more, ditch the digital assistants. And trust me, I have used Siri rarely, but a few times, because even I give into this stuff. It's human nature to want what's easy. Based on what I've learned, I have another recommendation some of you may not like. Again, no shaming here, okay? If you're already in a position that you sense needs change, work with it, Take time, work with it. But I don't recommend any social media platforms for kids under 18. Okay, I'll just let that set in for a second. I just don't. I do not see any good reasons. There might be some reasons, especially they will have some, but there's just no good enough reasons to open those platforms up to them when we're seeing what we're seeing coming out of them. So be extremely careful with that and just realize, what the heck are they missing if they're not on there? What are they missing? Nothing important. If people think they're important, they're going to pick up the phone, they're going to go to their house, they're going to meet them at church. There's nothing important happening on those platforms that you can't get in real life. You don't have to know what everybody's doing. You really don't. You just need to know about your local group. Pick up the phone, send a letter, send an email, go visit somebody, but it's the local group where you're living where you need to spend most of your energy and time. But these are in my local group. I'm connecting with all these different people. Well, there's different ways to connect. And sometimes there's more harm being done than good with these platforms, and we need to realize that. Be sure to set screen time limits. There's different ways to go about it. You can make it a reward for finishing schoolwork. You can give them a certain amount of time no matter what, but only that amount of time. You can have them earn it with chores. Whatever you want to do, but set limits and stick to them. And I would encourage you in less is more, The numbers are in. I mean, kids are spending hours and hours and hours, and we're seeing some pretty disturbing results, overall. So it's up to us, folks, We have a very limited amount of time here. The goal of an authentic relationship with our technology is the release of our potential. So here we are. We're into the last phase here. We are created to do good works pre-prepared in advance for us. Are we doing them? You've heard of the phrase FOMO, right? The acronym FOMO. It's fear of missing out, That's why we get on social media, to see what we've missed. That's why we, want the latest gadgets, because we want what our neighbor has. But I'm here to turn FOMO upside down, And I want you to join me in it. FOMO is not fear of missing out on those things. It's fear of missing out on the good works that God has planned in advance for us to do, And again, you think of those folks in the seats in WALL-E, It's a funny cartoon, but that's kind of where we're headed, Maybe not in that exact sense, but in similar ways, And I'm sorry for getting emotional, but this is something that cuts to the heart of who we are, as we've seen. So there's only one you. Your skills, your talents, your ideas, your efforts, all unique to you. And you are the one that can release them. The world doesn't need your avatar, it needs you. Okay, speaking of this coming metaverse, I feel sorry for Mark Zuckerberg, I really do. He gets so excited about this stuff, and he knows that his whole life is pinned to what Facebook is doing. He could walk away, but he doesn't, because he's buying into this idea that we can enjoy the metaverse, and we can get into it, and we can have everything we ever wanted, and we can just have all this connection. And it's like, what? That's not real, Sure, it might be entertaining and even informative, but it's not real. The other week I read an article about talk of your metaverse kids. Like, you can have kids in the metaverse. You don't need real kids. They just, contribute to all the problems we have. Get a pet and have some kids in the metaverse. It's really interesting to see where we're going, The one thing I would say with the metaverse is that every minute spent virtually is a minute less that you're going to have to spend in the real world. So that's how I sum it up, I'm not going to tell you don't go to the metaverse. I'm not going to tell you don't jump into a virtual world. There's many of them now. But I will tell you that, every minute spent there is going to be a minute less you have in this world. This is the world you live and die in. Back to my friend Doug Smith. He talks in his book about casting a vision for yourself. He says distraction and hopelessness are elements that destroy your vision. They're enemies of vision. He defines vision as the hopeful anticipation of participating in a certain positive future. And then he defines purpose as a person's specific role in fulfilling their vision. So people, you've got to have a vision, and you've got to have your purpose in that vision. Hopefully your vision is part of a larger vision that involves other people, your family and your friends and others, but what is your purpose in that vision? And the whole second half of Doug Smith's book is about how to, catch on to your vision and how to reduce the influence that technology has over us so that we can release our potential. Jesus, he says, is a great example of dedication to a vision. We see that. He is laser focused on his Father's work. And no, group of soldiers or doubting disciples or, throngs of people are going to, cast aside that vision. In fact, they're part of the vision, aren't they? All of those things are part of his vision and his purpose. So, unplug until you have a vision that is clear to you, okay? Pull that cord, press the power button, get off the social media, and just say, God, what is my vision? You know, what is that future that I want to contribute to? You know, and wait till it's clear, and it will come. It will come if you seek Him. I'll leave you with this. The duty of a Christian, and I got this from Jacques Ellul, and this, in fact, was at the beginning of his book, The Technological Society. Again, the book he wrote in 1954, where he introduced the concept of technique to the world. And it wasn't even him that presented this at first. It was the translator to his book. Again, he's French, right? So the English translator reminded me of this. He said that Ellul says that we stand uniquely, Christians do, at the intersection of this material world and the eternal world to come. Our duty is to testify to the truth of both worlds and affirm our freedom. So, folks, this is not just about you, okay? It's not even just about your family, you know? We have to take this to others. We have a duty to we have a duty to the world, to other people, to help them find freedom here, you know, and to testify to the truth of both worlds. And I found an image that sort of fits that. It's just such a beautiful image, not this particular one, but the mental image that he gives us with this idea, you know, this duty we have, you know. We're standing with 2 feet on this world, but we know there's a world to come, and we can speak to both of them. And that means that we are in a prime position to, you know, change the world.